Hello, everyone. My name is Piyush Ghosh, and I am the co-founder of the Optimist Citizen, which is India's first purely positive newspaper. And today I'm being joined by the wonderful founder of Good News Movement, Michelle. Welcome, Michelle. Thank you so much for joining me here today. I just want to know a little bit about where you come from and what has been that trigger of starting Good News Movement.
It's so great to meet you, and a special thanks to the Queen's Commonwealth Trust and all the work that's gone into making this happen. I am the founder of Good News Movement. My name is Michelle Figueroa. I'm in Boston, Massachusetts, and I had been a news correspondent for over 10 years, and I always gravitated toward uplifting stories. I think I got frustrated when I'd pitch positive stories and the news directors would reject them, because I thought not only is it a shame that this beautiful story isn't being told, but it's also a disservice. I think if we're only being presented the bad news, we're not getting the whole picture. We're not fully informed. And I think as a journalist, the objective is to inform. So my goal was to create a platform. And as a journalist, I thought I was equipped to build what hasn't been built, a platform for only good news, an alternative for people. So glad to join you and happy to be sharing with the global audience.
Thank you, Michelle. I think that's a lovely story. And we started with a similar objective of, there's so much negative news out there, but on the contrary, there's so much good happening around in the world that people don't talk about, and it doesn't appear on mainstream media. So we started with a very similar concept back in 2014. When did you start, Michelle? When did the Good News Movement start?
The Good News Movement started 2 years ago. Actually, I was sick in bed. I had a nasty ear infection, and it's those moments where you can't do anything else but really kind of lay in your own thoughts. And so I launched it from bed under some comforters. I took the leap of faith.
Wow. So you're saying in 2 years, you now have a following of over 1 million on Instagram, is it right?
That's right, almost 2 million, about 120 short of 2 million, a global audience from everywhere.
Wow. So tell me what the reception has been over the years, over the course of 2 years, and what do you think has really picked off so quickly?
So Good News Movement, it really is a movement because people are empowered to tell their own stories. I have correspondents essentially in every continent, most main cities, and even remote towns. A lot of times people filming their neighbor, their classmates. So they're sending me the stories. Sometimes instead of their local stations, they send me their stories. So I think really engaging the user has been huge. And also because it's been a really difficult year, I think that people in dark times, we look for the light even more. And so they're looking for hope. They're looking to see how everyone else is coping with the pandemic. So from March until now, we've almost doubled the amount of followers. And we're not totally obsessed with the numbers, but it is an indicator of the appetite there is for good news. And also people want to see, what inspiring things are people doing and how can I apply it in my life? So I think it's been fantastic in that regard. To see kind of the momentum it's taken on. And I think it'll continue to grow.
Wonderful. I think, I recently followed the Good News Movement, and, the moment I followed it, I've been seeing all these wonderful videos, very wholesome and very kind. So thank you so much for doing what you're doing, Michelle. I think it's really, saving days of a lot of people and giving them a lot of hope. But in my experience of running the Optimist Citizen, we have covered over 1,500 stories, reported 1,500 plus stories in the last 3-4 years. And when someone comes and asks me, what is your favorite story? I can't, seem to pick one, but I'm anyways going to throw this to you. Michelle, what do you think? Can you tell us a few favorite stories of yours?
I have to first congratulate you because I think you're filling a niche that's very important in India. You're really leading the way, and I think you'll inspire tons of people to follow in your path. I think picking the best story is so tough, but I would say actually one that I did recently especially moved me. It was a town in Alabama that put up their Christmas lights early for a girl who's probably not going to make it to Christmas. And it's really beautiful to see the community come together. And so we took that story and we actually asked our followers to tag the Atlanta Braves, Kristen Bell, some other musicians, and all of those people have created videos for this young girl, Allie. So it's been wonderful to know that not only am I sharing good news, but it's a vehicle for change to do good. And, there's such an amazing amount of people that want to do good. It's just a matter of asking them.
Wow. one of our readers one day sent us an email saying that his son, he was reading a newspaper and he woke up, when he read the newspaper and he standed up and said that there's so much good in the world that I didn't know about. So I think these are some stories that, all of us together are trying to report. And I think it's making a lot of difference, like you said. But we've seen over the years of working with the Optimist Citizen and have our share of learnings and experiences. And we have learned both, how people consume news to how the market of constructive journalism is growing. I want to understand from you what has been your learnings and your discoveries over the journey of building Good News Movement.
It's a great question. I think there are three main things that I've learned. That even grown adults, we sometimes just need simple instructions. I think a lot of people want to volunteer, but there are so many volunteer opportunities in the world that we don't know where to start. So I think what my page tries to do, and hopefully we accomplish it, is we give people simple instructions of how to make a difference and how to help their communities. I think that's number one. Number two is that you don't necessarily have to feel ready to launch something big or launch a movement. Like I said, I was in bed, I was feeling sick, and I think half of the job is really just taking the leap of faith, and the other half is staying the course, putting in the hard work, staying humble, working hard, and staying authentic to your voice. It can be tempting to try to be like someone else, but I think people really appreciate when you try to be authentic. The other thing I've learned is that, like I said, there's so many people wanting to help, and then it just starts with a simple ask, and that can be difficult for people to ask for help. So I've really discovered that there are outlets, there are resources, there are people that want to help you out no matter what you're going through. So the page really connects people that need help with the helpers.
Wonderful. And, that brings me to my next question. So we have been told a lot of times that, if you only show the rosy things, the goody things, the sunshine things, probably not showing what's really happening in the world. Do you get a lot of that as well on your page?
So I haven't gotten that much feedback, but what I would say is that I don't think that the bad news shouldn't be shared. I think that the bad news should be shared, but I think equal prominence should be given to good news. So instead of telling us what's wrong with us, also tell us what's right with us. Instead of telling us what problems we have, give the same amount of light to the solutions.
Majority of the comments that you receive on your Instagram page would be positive and lovely, but I'm sure there would be a couple of people here and there doing a little bit of negativity, posting a little bit of negative content. How do you deal with that? How does your team manage with that kind of negativity?
Yes, the trolls, right? We all have them, no matter what we do. It's something that's out of my control, right? It's always going to happen. And I just don't engage. If I see that maybe it's a learning opportunity, maybe the person's ignorant, maybe I will. But to be honest, as you know, sometimes they're just looking for a rise out of you, and maybe they create fake accounts. So I just think, let me get my rise out of all the good comments and not the negative one. So I try to always keep a good perspective on that and not let it drag me down, because people are counting on our efforts.
And how big is your team, Michelle? Do you have people from all across the world?
So it's funny, someone asked me how big is my news team. I told them 1.8 million people. I mean, like I said, people are really producers everywhere. But ultimately, as a journalist, I take anything I publish as seriously as I would on CNN or any other network. So really, it's me. I have to give my husband credit. He helps out too. But yeah, it's just us. And it's really wonderful. I get good news about every 5 minutes or so. So it's constantly being fed positivity.
I'm sure. I think that, rightly brings me to my next question, which is, people, tend to gravitate towards negative things or any small negative thing that they would encounter and leave aside all the goodness and positivity out there. So we have always thought about, how do we make good news important and exciting for people?
Well, I think I would take one step back, and really the news industry is a business, right? Their objective is to get ratings, to then get money from advertisers. They know that bad news will sell. They know that they'll get their advertising money. They're not so sure about good news. So I think now with pages like ours, they're seeing, well, people do really like good news. And wow, there are so many views on these videos. So they're starting to change their models. But I think because our objectives have always been just to share good news, all the decisions we make are based on that. And I think that that's really the difference. And I won't ever try to make news more exciting or more important, because as a journalist, we try to honor the stories and
Right.
keep the truth in each story. And so I think we don't really have to do much. A lot of the stories speak for themselves. As long as we keep on putting it out there, I think that is the key. And really putting out the good news where people are. People are on their cell phones 4 or 5 hours a day. So I think
Right.
we're in a good place.
Absolutely. I think I agree with you. Before, platforms like ours existed, I think probably people didn't have enough access to positive news for them to like it enough. I think now that there are so many of them like ours, I think positive news is really gaining its, importance. But I just want to ask you another question that, we have been also thinking about how platforms like these alternate media, like Good News Movement, like the Optimist Citizen, how can we actually change the mainstream media industry? And how can we nudge them to, increase their proportion of positive news stories? Because, as you said, the idea is to have equal reporting of both positives and negatives. So how do we as alternative media nudge mainstream journalists to change their ways?
It's an interesting question. I don't think necessarily it's our job to change it. Hopefully, we inspire change, and I'm flattered when people tell me that they have seen a change in the direction of more positive news. I think it just comes to balance. And I
Mhm.
think we're seeing that shift of more balance. I'm sure you've seen it too in India, that change. And even on social media, a proliferation of good news sites. So I think it is shifting. Ultimately, who dictates that? It's the audience, right? The currency for TV news outlets is the audience, the ratings. So
Absolutely.
I think it's really the audience that needs to speak. And, if you don't want as much bad news, don't consume it. And so I think the newsrooms will have to adjust.
Right. And I think you made a right point that we also have been talking about in our networks that, the consumption pattern has to change for the media to flip. If we as consumers can change the way we consume news, I'm sure the media would follow that. So that's a very good point that you put up, Michelle. I want to ask you about, you shared one of these stories that you really liked, but I'm sure you've had plenty of such stories where you have made some incredible impact with those. So can you share a little bit of what kind of impact do you really think your platform is making in daily life of people? When they wake up, they see a video of yours. How does it really change their day? And what has been the other impactful stories that you have had over the course of 2 years?
There was one boy who was homeless, and he walked all the way from Georgia to here to Boston to raise money for people that were homeless. And I think people like that, they just inspire you. And I think it makes me want to learn more about him. Consuming good news really has an impact on our mental space. We're less anxious. And there have been studies that show this, that it creates less anxiety, it inspires people, it puts people in a good mood to do positive things in their life. And maybe we won't even know the impact of our page, because it might be someone just helping out their neighbor, mowing their lawn, or it might just be someone reaching out to an old friend because they saw a story. So I think the impact will outlive us both. That's the idea that, you've heard the butterfly effect, that all these actions create further actions and further good. So I think that the impact won't be measured, but I'm sure it'll have an effect. And I think we're on a right path, and only good can come of it.
Absolutely. I think we have had very similar impact stories and experiences. So we did a story of this man called Kalyan Akkipedi, who was working in the corporate for very long in a place called Bengaluru in India. And then he left his job and he went around the rural pockets of India to find out what poverty really means. And then whatever he understood out of it, he came back and he started a sustainable village in a small land that he had in a place called Bengaluru. So we did a story and we posted it online. And a couple of our readers, one from US and one from Dubai, so they had some land back in India. They were Indians, and so they called us up saying, okay, we want to replicate this man's project on the land that we have. And then another person called up saying, okay, we want to volunteer. And there have been so many such stories where people have really got back to us saying, okay, we want to collaborate with the subject and do some kind of positive actions with them. I think, and that's what you're talking about, the ripple effect that our work brings to multiple domains and lives. And I'm sure we'll keep doing this for as long as we can, and it will outgrow us definitely. Tell me something, Michelle, are you planning to open up a news channel at some point, or how do you want to grow the good news movement?
So for now, we're going to continue to grow. And as a reporter, once it's safe to go out on the field more, I'd like to go and tell the stories myself, I think that there are different ways to go a little more in depth with these wonderful people that I'm meeting. Sometimes you can do a news story and it's not enough. So I feel like I want to extend the conversation, whether it's through the podcast format, written format. It's just a wonderful kind of starting ground for anything. And I think the plan is to continue to grow. I don't know on your end if what kind of submissions you get and how do you get through them all.
I mean, it's very interesting for us as well. When we started off, we thought, we'll fall short of stories when we start doing it. But in the moment we started doing it, we can't make space on our newspaper, to be honest. There's so much good happening around in the world. And we also keep getting a lot of stories from our readers and from all these subjects that we have covered over time. And you said it that, you get inspired by all the wonderful stories that you do. And whenever someone asks me, what is the inspiration behind doing this and how do you get a motivation? I tell them, okay, we have been doing so many stories, so many inspiring stories for so long. We are never short of inspiration and we are always motivated to do more of that.
It's so true. I never have trouble finding stories. And
yeah.
I remember a local news reporter was like, how do you find it? And I said, they've always existed. Just because they haven't been reported or in headlines doesn't mean they haven't existed. But I think what we're doing is creating a channel for people to send their stories. And it just feels so good to, sometimes when my news story would get rejected, I was so frustrated. I would say, oh, this is such a gem. And I almost like kept them in this like treasure trove of like rejected little gems of stories. So now it's so wonderful that I don't have to be rejected as much. I'm my own news director. I can say yes to myself every day, all day long.
I'm just very curious, how do your ex-colleagues or editors react to your platform? Are they excited? Are they happy about what you're doing?
I know that a lot of the producers look on our pages and it's fascinating to see something that is on our page and then on the nightly news the same night or the next day. Wow. So it's really great to see that kind of influence. Obviously, I don't want to give myself too much credit. I think that, we're making a bit of a difference. But I really feel it's been a collective effort with the followers. And I think people appreciate the fact that they can make a difference. They're not just someone sitting there consuming something, but they can be a part of this. And I think it really is a vehicle for social change that's not utilized as much as it could be. People are on their phones a lot. So, if you consume bad things, you're going to feel weighed down, heavy, and sad. But if you consume positive things, I really think it has an impact on how you view the rest of your day.
Wonderful. Thank you. I think on behalf of everyone, all the readers, all the 1.8 million readers that you have, I being one of them, I would thank you for what you're doing, Michelle. I think it's incredible. And every day morning, you make our mornings even more happier and even more wonderful. I think we really look forward to more of your content in the coming years, and probably you go bigger and bigger every year.
I think what you're doing is very important because I think it brings the globe a little closer together, right? With the stories that we're doing, it's connecting people to different places of the world that they don't know about. I mean, I think we have the power to tell stories that otherwise people wouldn't know. At the end of the day, humans are good people, and there's a lot more good in the world than there is bad. And I think people should just always remember that. I mean, they should always remember that this world we live on, it's a good place filled with good people. And, it's only a few bad that are in the world, and maybe they make more headlines, but they shouldn't stay in our mental space as much.
Absolutely. I think that's a great point to conclude the conversation that we have had. Thank you, Michelle. And I'm so looking forward to collaborate in any capacity that we can and probably bring positive news to the global front as much as we can with our combined efforts. Thank you so much, Michelle.
Sounds great. I look forward to it.
Thank you.